Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flipside. We sit in a very interesting time period right now, with Maha being at the center of attention in the field of health and wellness. We are pushing and moving in a direction that many of us, especially in the health and wellness, nutrition fields, have been wanting things to go for a very, very long time, decades. We recently got the new food pyramid that Kennedy released to the public. It's an inverted pyramid, different suggestions, different ideas than what the old standards were. And it has caused quite the stir. There are so many people who, well, and let me preface what I was going to say. I was going to say so many people that are complaining about the new pyramid, but these people that are complaining about the new pyramid would have complained about anything just because Secretary Kennedy's name is attached to it. It really doesn't matter. The vast majority of people that are complaining about the things that Secretary Kennedy does, I'm not going to say that it is intentional malice. However, their intent is to put down anything that's attached to Trump. Their intent is to denigrate anything that Kennedy does. And my sneaking suspicion, and I think I'm correct about this, is that if Secretary Kennedy was pro-vaccine, you would hear none of this. None of this. In fact, the other side of the aisle and all of the other agencies and people that are up in arms right now because of the things he does, if he was a pro-vaccine person, they would be on board with everything else he was doing. They wouldn't have a problem with it. There would be none of this uproar. They wouldn't be complaining about the food pyramid. They wouldn't be complaining about the food dyes. They wouldn't be complaining about glyphosate. They wouldn't be complaining about changing baby formula. They wouldn't be changing about any. These things would be across the board things that they would say, hey, this is a good idea. This is good change. There would be more cross the aisle support. But because he is, as he is with his stance on vaccines, because he is pro-science, actual science, gold standard science, non-biased, purchased, bought, paid for science, because that's what he wants, and he pushes for that, he gets huge pushback because that's the vaccine world that we live in. Now, today's conversation has nothing to do with vaccines. We might cross that bridge, I don't know, but it has nothing to do with vaccines. Today's conversation is about nutrition, though. And the guest that I have today is someone who I have followed. I wouldn't say I've followed this person's career, but I have known of and worked around in the sphere of this person for decades. Their information has been something that has influenced and guided my nutritional background, if you will say, for a very, very long time. Now, the person that I have on here today is Sally Fallon. Sally Fallon is not a nutritionist. She is not, her background is not to do with nutrition at all, really. I am going to be very curious to ask her how she came about to be in the position that she is. Sally Fallon's educational background, she has a bachelor's in English and a master's in English. And so she, for all intents and purposes, could have been an English teacher. And then suddenly now here she is as the director, the president of the Weston A Foundation. So here's a bit of her background for you, and then I'll go a little bit further with that before we ever introduce her into the program. So she is the founding president of the Weston A Price Foundation. And for those who are interested, that is Weston, WESTON, Price.org. I will put all of this information into the description of the episode on all channels, YouTube, Spotify, Rumble. The Weston A Price Foundation is a nonprofit education foundation that is dedicated to returning to nutrient-dense food to the American tables. That's quoting straight from their website. Excuse me. And this fits into the Maha model very, very well, which is one of the questions that I'm going to be asking her is based on those types of ideas. She is also the editor of the Foundation's quarterly journal, which is called Wise Traditions. She's also the founder of a campaign for real milk, and that is realmilk.com if you want to look that up. The goal to that foundation is universal access to clean raw milk from pasture-fed animals. I can ask her about that and see what her thoughts are on that. But her big contribution, from my perspective, is the information that she has published. She is the author of the best-selling cookbook and information book, Nourishing Traditions. And she wrote that with nutritionist Mary Enig. Mary Enig passed away back in 2014. She also wrote the Nourishing Traditions book for baby and child care, which was written in conjunction with Dr. Tom Cowan. She also wrote one called Nourishing Broth with nutritionist Kayla Daniel. She also wrote Nourishing Fats and Nourishing Diets. Her latest book is called The Contagion Myth, and she co-authored that with Dr. Tom Cowan as well. Now, the book, Nourishing Traditions, and I'm going to switch the screen here. All right. So you should be able to see that here. This is Nourishing Traditions. I was hoping to be able to hold that book up here and talk about it because I've owned a copy of Nourishing Traditions for a very, very long time. My edition was pretty well used. The lots of bent pages and frayed edges from overuse. This book influenced my thinking nutritionally. I don't know if I can say this legitimately or not, but I'll say it. And that is probably more so than anything else that I've read. Nourishing Traditions was a very influential and powerful book in my mind when I first read that, which was back in the 90s. The book went counter and contrary to a lot of, at the time, popular opinion regarding nutrition. And I'm phrasing it that way on purpose. I'm saying popular opinion because a lot of the things that we have counted as nutritional science, nutritional truth, is in fact opinion. It's opinion based on falsy research. Not a very good way of saying that. False research. It is an opinion based on doctored research, a lot of these opinions, and which is why the food pyramid has been inverted and changed the way it is now, because it's being based on more accurate science. So I'm very curious to see what Sally Fallon is going to say regards to the new food pyramid and to the changing information regarding nutrition. Things are moving now in a direction that Nourishing Traditions was basically pushing towards way back in the 90s when this was first published. I think this was published in 92, I do believe, somewhere around there. Nourishing Traditions spoke contrary to the belief that cholesterol was such a bad thing. It spoke contrary to saturated fats being a bad thing. It essentially looked at nutrition and said, let's go back in time to, the 1800s, the early 1900s, and look at what people were doing nutritionally in the country. What were they doing? And not now. What is the current? So it was going backwards in time. Lots of fermented foods and things like that as well. If you've never seen this book, Nourishing Traditions, I highly recommend it. It is 1/3 book, 2/3 cookbook. So there's a lot of recipes in here that use kind of very old school type thinking to the recipes. Good recipes, very good recipes. But it's that first third that is the most impactful to me as someone who's done nutrition work with clients and with patients for many decades. This has influenced a lot of my thinking. Do I think that this is the end all be all? when it comes to nutrition? Absolutely not. And I'll qualify that. I have never been one to try to glam onto one particular nutritional thinking and say that this is one size fits all. Everyone should be able to do the same thing. I think keto has great effects. I think carnivore can be very helpful in particular situations. I think a paleo diet can be very good. There are histamine diets and autoimmune paleo diets, which can help people in certain situations. Low FODMAP, lots of different diets that can be very helpful for a person on their journey to whatever place they need to go. The information in Nourishing Traditions creates a core foundation of clean, whole food eating and thinking. And so it creates a foundation that I think other nutritional ideas can kind of move in and out of this as a base. So it is one of those books that, and you're going to hear me repeat this when Sally Fallon comes on. It's one of those books that for every person I've ever met who I find out that they are in school to become a registered dietitian, I make sure they know about this book. Registered dietitians, the schooling that they get is a very, I liken it to medical doctors when they go to school. They're going to go to school, they're going to learn a very set paradigm of thinking that puts them on a path to be a Western medical doctor. And they can veer off and become a functional doctor, functional medicine doctor, or something like that. But they're going to be this traditional Western medical doctor because of that schooling. Registered dietitians kind of do the same thing. They're going to be learning how bad cholesterol is and how bad saturated fat is and how the food pyramid is actually a good thing, et cetera. And so unless they challenge their thinking, they become a registered dietitian that, for all intents and purposes, and I really do not mean to offend registered dietitians out there who think of themselves the way I'm about to describe this, but if they continue down the path from everything they were taught in school, and that's the only thing they do, they're, to me, no more effective than a Western medical doctor who never veers off of what they are taught also. There's so much out there, so much truth out there that is not taught in our schools that you have to find out on your own. Nourishing Traditions is one of those books that I think every person who is interested in nutrition, especially those who are working in nutritional fields, should read. Now, it is based on the work of Weston A. Price. Weston A. Price was a dentist. I don't know the exact time period he lived in, but it was late 1800s, early 1900s. He did a lot of work with people in different countries, looking at their teeth, looking at their diets, and connecting a whole food, clean, culturally appropriate diet to good dental hygiene, good dental health. And it just developed a whole train of thinking about how a person should eat to create the best health. It's an interesting journey. There are many books written on Weston Price. There are some movies, some biographies that you can find that are about Weston A. Price. I think he was a fascinating individual. I think his journey to discover the information that he discovered was a fascinating journey. And there are other books that I would kind of cross over into this journey of thinking with food. Nourishing Traditions is one of those. Pottinger's Cats, you may have heard me speak about that on other episodes, is another one of those books that I think every nutritionist should read. Once again, it's not that every bit of morsel of truth exists in these books, but these books are excellent resources to help you stray from the path of your education. It's an interesting way of thinking about that. If we get locked in and stuck into only what we were taught from our school's perspective, from our professors' perspectives, it can often be very limiting. And I think that's the case with a lot of professions, not just health related, but of course my focus is health related. So that's where I'm speaking from. Even with chiropractors, if you only stick with the perspective of what you were taught in school, there's so many things you're missing out on. Other techniques, other therapies, other philosophical models and ideas that can help you expand upon who you are and what you do. And so there's lots of growth that occurs outside of school, right? And so this book, once again, as a resource, is one of those things that I highly, highly, highly recommend. I'm going to come out of here. There we go. Excuse me. One of the other things Sally Fallon is doing, pulling up her bio again here, if I can find it. There it is. She is also the owner of P.A. Bowen Farmstead, and that's actually the website is P.A. Bowen Farmstead in Southern Maryland, which produces raw cheese and raw milk from pastured cows, pastured meats, and grass-fed poultry and eggs. It is not surprising that she also does this because she lives as she speaks. She lives as she preaches. She also blogs. Her blog is nourishingtraditions.com, and you can read her writings there. Not good for my voice to be going out already this early on. Weston A. Price, interesting to me. The path that the Weston A. Price information goes down is a path that is very old school. And I guess what I mean by old school is you could also call it retro, right? I mean, it's the idea of it are ideas that our great grandfathers, great grandmothers, these are the things they did as far as cooking with real, raw milk, raw butter, lard, bone marrow, those types of things. They were eating diets that had more saturated fat and cholesterol in them than the diets of the 70s and 80s for sure. We switched into diets that were low in saturated fats, low in fats in general, really pushing towards low cholesterol. And we did that for many decades, and heart disease did not go down. In fact, heart disease went up, cancer rates went up, lots of diseases went up and not down. So with low fat, low saturated fat, low cholesterol diets as the forefront of what we were doing, we have higher heart disease, higher cancer rates, higher arthritis rates than we did prior to that. Now, is that a direct correlation? Is it a direct this does equal this? No, it's not. There's lots of other things to think about. We also, during that time, have more chemicals in our foods than ever before. So, which one is the culprit? Which one is the key? I'm not going to try to preach to say that I know that as a fact. But I do think that getting back to consuming whole, properly prepared, fermented foods that avoid all the processing, all the industrial seed oils, if we get back to more ancestral eating habits, that's a good way to say that, that focus on very nutrient-dense whole foods, that to me is the foundation of health. Now, some of this is going to get repeated when Sally comes on here in just a few minutes, but it's worth repeating. Eating animal products that are pasture-fed, wild caught, eating organ meats, eating full-fat dairy products instead of low-fat, getting away from processed foods. This is really the key for most things. You can pretty much find research to support just about any diet. If you look up paleo, you'll find research on how wonderful that is. You'll find all these testimonials from people. Let's just even focus on testimonials. Tons of testimonials for people losing weight and getting healthy and getting rid of disease on a paleo diet. You'll see the same thing, though, for a carnivore diet. You'll see the same thing for a vegetarian diet. You'll see the same thing for a keto diet. You'll see the same thing for all sorts of diets. There's always going to be large numbers of testimonials from people who got incredibly healthy off of eating a particular diet. Now, that's not to say that now everybody should run to that diet. It's not also saying that's entirely truthful, that diet was the magic. If a person goes from a typical American diet, okay, so the standard American diet, of course, if you take that SAD, that's SAD, the SAD diet, standard American diet, is a very poor diet. It is a diet high in processed foods, chemical laden foods, very nutrient poor, not nutrient dense. And if you take someone from one of those diets and you switch them to a diet that is nutrient dense, their body's going to respond. And so, yes, I think it does matter the type of structure that exists in the diet. But one of the reasons why you're going to get such great effects from people first going into one of these types of diets is the fact that they're cleaning out their diet. So that to me is one of the most important things. But I'm going to let Sally Fallon talk on that. I'm going to let Sally Fallon direct you on that, because at this time I want to let Sally Fallon into our show, introduce you to her, and let her share her wisdom with you. So without further ado, let's let Sally Fallon in. Ms. Fallon, how are you? I cannot hear you. I think you're on mute. There you go. There it is. How are you?
I'm fine.
Ms. Fallon, do you mind if I call you Sally?
Not at all.
Excellent.
Everybody calls me.
You call me Michael. So
Okay.
we are recording straight out of the gate here, just so you know. I've spent some time here before letting you in, talking about your background and your history.
Okay.
I don't know if I did it entirely justice, so I'm going to let you share me
That's
some
okay.
of that. Here's one of the things I want to know right at the very beginning is how someone with your background, because your background's in English, correct?
Yes, yes.
How did you get wrapped up in all of this craziness?
Actually, my background is in cooking. I came from I would say my parents were the original foodies.
Ha,
They traveled a lot. They were really interested in food, and my mother was a great cook. And so they'd come home and make all these things. We had cassoulet and filet of sole meuniere and prosciutto. I mean, we were eating these things back in the 50s. So, and then I love to cook, and the really great event for my mother and myself was when Julia Childs published Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And my mother was a Southerner. She made chicken broth, and she always used butter. We didn't get raw milk, and we didn't get cod liver oil, but we ate real food. So I was very, very fortunate to have that background. And then as I started having my own children and feeding them this way, sort of French cuisine, lots of rich food, cream, butter, egg yolks, so forth. This message started to come out about low fat and how we should put our children on low fat diets. And I just knew that this was wrong. I couldn't have, I mean, I get cranky on a low fat diet, and I didn't want my children to be cranky. And it was just about that time that I read Dr. Price's book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And that kind of saved everything. See, I knew I was doing it right. And I just continued. And actually, each one of my children got healthier because I was putting more of Dr. Price's principles in practice.
So
then I got this idea to write a cookbook that would put his principles, to popularize them, to make them more accessible to Americans, everybody. And that's when Nourishing Traditions was born. Here I am. I'm trapped. I can't get out. So.
And how did you meet Mary Enig?
Well, I started writing this book and I realized that I was just an English major. I didn't have the science background and I needed some help. And I happened to read an article about her at that time. She was trying to get rid of the trans fats, and so I contacted her. She didn't live far from me, and I said I need some consulting. Can you do some consulting for me? So I sent her the manuscript as I'd written it so far, and she said, "Well, you really need to sit down with me." And she said, "Your conclusions are right, but you don't understand the science." So I spent several afternoons with her going as she taught me the basics of lipid chemistry, lipid biochemistry. And then it got so that we were just kind of talking about everything in the book. And I said, you really need to be a co-author. So that's how that happened.
So I want to tell you that the book Nourishing Traditions was one of the most important books to me in my development as a nutritionist, as a functional medicine doctor. I will tell you that. Um, I wanted so desperately to hold my copy up to you, and I'm over the weekend I'm running around and I'm telling my wife, I'm like, "Where's our copy? Where's our copy?" And she's like, "It should be here. It should be here." And I'm like, "No, it's not. Where is it?" And I can't find it anywhere. It's old. It's dog-eared. It's all falling apart.
That's
And
kind I like to see. Yes.
yeah, and I'm thinking that we used to in our office, we used to do a book loaning program. I think I loaned it out and they never returned it, I think is, so I'm going to have to get another copy of it. So I will tell you though, because in the introduction I was doing before you came on, one of the things I said was that anytime, and this has happened a lot of times, anytime I've ever come across someone who tells me they are in school to become a registered dietitian, the first thing I tell them is that's wonderful. Can I give you some advice? And if they say yes, I say, there's a couple of books that you really need to read, and you don't wait until after you're done. Start reading them now, because it might help, direct your thinking a little bit. And so I say, you have to read Nourishing Traditions. I said, yes, it's about 2/3 cookbook, but that first third where all that information is there, that's powerful stuff. And it goes contrary to a lot of stuff they're teaching you. And then the other one I tell them to read is Pottinger's Cats.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I thank you for writing that book, because it has influenced my life greatly. It's influenced all the people that I've worked with as well, because that has created a foundation for the way I view things with nutrition. So I from my heart, thank you very much for writing that book. Yeah.
And really the key food, the pivotal decision that you whether
I'm sorry, you broke up. What'd you say?
whether or not to use butter.
Ah, yes.
That's the key point of bifurcation, so to speak. The butter is the quintessential healthy fat. It's got so many things in it that help children grow and help us think properly and help our mood and skin and everything. And of course, the substitutes for butter are food of demons. They are made in factories and promoted as being through lies as being better than nature's.
Well, let's go down this pathway then. And I want to make full circle to this first comment that I'm going to make. And that is, of course, the Maha movement and the new food pyramid, and where we're going now directionally has got to make you very happy.
Well, there's a stick of butter on that upside down pyramid, but when they keep the 10% cap on saturated fat, there's not much room for butter in there.
Well, let's talk about that, because you're right. The two of the things I think that were the most controversial in Nourishing Traditions was the stance on saturated fat and the stance on cholesterol. That those were probably the two greatest. And the other book I always recommend is The Cholesterol Myths by Ufi Raznovsky. Amazing book. So talk a little bit about that. Let's talk to me about what the myth is with that, what the reality is with that.
And that's the big stumbling block. And these guidelines are instituted by USDA, whose mandate is to sell grains. They're not going to say buy margarine in spreads because they're made out of grains. That's too obvious. So they have to figure out something to criticize in their competition, which is animal fats. What are the two things in animal fats that you do not find in the industrial seed oils? One is saturated fat, and the other is cholesterol. And they just decided we're going to make enemies out of these, and they started a smear campaign, which is not based on truth. Let's start with saturated fat. The idea is that the saturated fat clog your arteries, like pipes, and if you pour tallow down your drain, yes, it'll clog your drain. There's a huge difference between the drain and your body. Your body is about 30 degrees warmer. And in your body, saturated fats are viable. If you didn't have saturated fats, your cell membrane.
So your sound is starting to break up. I apologize. I don't think it's coming from my end. I'm not sure.
Is that better?
Say again.
Is that better?
It's a little bit, yes. We'll just continue. We'll see what happens here.
So anyway, they've made this the villain out of saturated fats, and your body would not work if it didn't have saturated fats. Majority of fats, probably 55% of the fat molecules in your body have to be saturated, or your body just won't work. And if you don't eat saturated fats, your body has a backup plan, which is to make them out of refined carbohydrates. And this is where people they have to have sugar, they have to have white flour, because the body uses that to make saturated fat. So all these cravings that we see, and it just kind of pushes people into the processed foods, basically. And then cholesterol. To make an enemy out of cholesterol it's like making an enemy out of sunlight, which we've done actually.
Yeah.
But cholesterol is essential for all animal life. We couldn't function without cholesterol. Our brains are very high in cholesterol. It's needed for brain function. It's needed for hormone production. It's needed for cell membrane function. Cholesterol is needed for everything. And this idea that we have made a villain out of cholesterol, or first they blamed it for heart disease. Now you go to the Kidney Foundation or the Alzheimer's Foundation or whatever, they all blame cholesterol.
Yeah, even cancer.
Cancer, yes.
Yeah.
And the cholesterol's your best friend.
And 80% of it is made by our liver. So, the vast majority of the cholesterol in our body is not even from our diet. Our body makes it.
That's absolutely right. And even the biggest promoters of the cholesterol fallacy admitted that eating high cholesterol foods does not change your cholesterol in your body. Ansel Keys said this.
Yeah.
So
Ansel Keys, the father of the research for anti-saturated fat, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the father of the research that first of all, convince the doctors to convince the patients to not eat the foods that their ancestors ate.
Right.
So what happened? Well, first of all, they stopped eating butter. They stopped giving whole milk to their children. Now, if you give skim milk to calves, they die. They won't make it to adulthood. But we do this to our children. To stop cooking the French fries in tallow. Now, McDonald's used tallow up to 1984, but there was this big anti-cholesterol campaign to get them to stop. And they wanted to stop because the vegetable oils were so much cheaper. But the thing about doing fries in tallow, I'm not pushing French fries.
Sure.
But people eat French fries, and when they were made with tallow, at least they weren't bad for you.
Yeah.
And then lard is a wonderful fat. It's the fat that's most similar to the fat in your body. We're very much like pigs in that respect. And, all the people I knew who grew up eating lard had beautiful skin, just It's the perfect fat for your
I
skin.
mean, there were people would take tallow and lard and actually put it on the skin as a
Oh
moisturizer.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a big new industry in this tallow cream, and
Yeah.
they don't, because the lard doesn't smell as good as the tallow, I guess. But
Yeah.
they
I wanted to
they
pause for a second and show something here based on what you were talking about, because I wanted to show our listeners some of some of the truth, the reality behind what you were just saying. Uh, this is now, understand that if I Google something, okay, Google's algorithms really are set up in ways to protect a lot of industries. And
yes,
so if I can find this on a Google search, you know, it's got to be
it's
so true.
unavoidable.
It's unavoidable. And so if you pull up sugar industry created research to demonize fats, right off the bat there. So 1960s, this Sugar Research Foundation, now the Sugar Association, paid Harvard scientists to publish a 1967 New England Journal of Medicine review that downplayed sugar's role in heart disease and highlighted saturated fat as the primary culprit. And you can read on and on about this because that was only a one-time thing, but it actually went on and on, that the sugar industry, which is the grain industry, because it's really
Yeah,
the same thing, that
yeah.
that was a game plan. It was a game plan. It was meant to happen that way.
And also now what I see coming up in my news feed is sugar doesn't cause diabetes. I mean,
That's a play on words, right?
well, we really have to suspend rational thinking if we think.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I One of the things, and sometimes it's easier now, far easier now than it used to be. Used to be, it was a challenge to try and get clients to understand that a keto diet could totally cure their diabetes. It's gone. No problem. You could do a keto diet with all this fat in it, and the fat coming from a lot of saturated fat, coconut oil, palm oil, butter, tallow, and your diabetes could be gone like that.
Well, that's before they discovered insulin or made it possible to take insulin. That's how they treated diabetes, with a very high fat diet, because you
Yeah.
do not have to produce any insulin to digest fats. You only need
Right.
insulin for carbohydrates. The one thing well, people say keto diet, carnivore diet, all the same breath. But one thing that we do warn about is uh, not to eat any protein without the fat, because that was what traditional people did.
Yeah.
If they killed an animal, most of the meat was just thrown to the dogs. They ate the organ meats and they saved all the fat. The lean meat was smoked or salted or cured in some way and then spread with the fat. I think of something like pemmican, which was, mostly fat. And we have a scientific reason for this, because eating protein actually calls out stores of vitamin A from the liver. And so you need to be replenishing the vitamin A while you're eating vitamin A to use protein. So one of the things that we've been concerned about is people, not against meat, of course, we all eat meat, but not to overdo on the protein, especially things like protein powders and lean meat, which is inedible anyways.
And see, that's like with the carnivore diet. I love the carnivore diet as a tool, but I don't like it as a long-term diet. As a tool, it can be great for helping you get into keto. It could be good for helping adjust and shift something in a certain manner. But I'm not crazy about it as some kind of a permanent basis diet.
I was just reading an old book on alcoholism from the 1800s, and he said not to eat meat if you were an alcoholic. Only eat organ meats and fats.
Interesting.
But if you just eat meat, you will have a thirst for alcohol.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting. What's interesting to me, it's so funny because I remember making this kind of a general statement decades ago to somebody. And it seems more and more and more that this is a true statement now, that the real truth in health, I guess, as a general topic, is to go backwards, not forwards. Yeah. Let's go back to what our ancestors did, and we'll find more, we went from drinking out of plastic bottles to drinking out of metal. So we basically went back to drinking out of canteens. That's what we did, right?
Oh, I see. Yes.
You know, we went back to drinking out of canteens instead of plastic, right? But that's that same idea. We went from eating chemical margarine garbage to butter, right? So going backwards is there's lots of good wisdom in.
And we're going backwards from the modern feedlot to putting our animals back on grass again, which I
Yes.
think is very important because that maximizes the fat soluble vitamins in the meat. And, one thing that happens in the feedlots is the animals put on a lot of fat, but it's not saturated fat. It's monounsaturated fat. And that's the kind that's sequestered into the fat cells when we eat fat. So we actually warn against overdoing it on olive oil because that'll make you gain weight.
And olive oil really can't be heated very well, too.
I agree with that. I don't think you should be cooking with it. I know that the French do. They cook in olive oil and butter, and for years I did that. But now I cook in lard or tallow.
Yeah. I think things are shifting. Tell me what you love about Maha and tell me what you don't love about Maha.
Well, Maha's trying. They really are trying, and I have a lot of sympathy for RFK. I mean, what a job he has. Pushback from the industry is incredible. But there is a new emphasis on eating real foods and avoiding processed foods, ultra processed foods. That's now a word. The Weston A Price Foundation has always opposed vaccinations, and I'm not sure how much progress they've made in stopping this on a professional level, but they've raised a lot of consciousness. I think it's 60% of moms now are concerned, and many of those concerned moms are refusing the vaccinations. I saw something really interesting the other day. It was all the different counties in California and the increase in autism. There's no exemptions in California anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Increase in autism in all races, all counties, except among whites in affluent counties, because they are possibly have more information, have better ways of avoiding the vaccinations, and it's going down among whites in affluent counties. And it should be going down with everybody. It should be disappearing with everybody. But
well, that is one thing that has been statistically true.
Yeah.
Since they started looking at the stats for this, is that the people who decide to be pro-choice, who want to be against getting a vaccination. I'm trying to avoid using the word anti-vaxxers. I don't like that.
But that's what we are.
Yeah, well, but those who choose to be anti-vax are the highest education.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that has always been the case.
And they try to make the case that it's people who are uneducated who are opposed to vax, but it's absolutely not true.
Absolutely not true. I mean, that they like to try to make up all sorts of stuff to win their argument, but they're not winning their argument now. I was saying in the last episode that I did, it's rats on a sinking ship. So
yeah.
Tell me more about cholesterol.
Oh, okay. So I actually give a talk called The Oiling of America, and where I show the original studies that they used to justify the anti-cholesterol campaign were not good studies. They cheated on them. They presented them as if they were proving that cholesterol was bad, and they actually didn't. So, as Dr. Ravenscoff says, these are the cholesterol myths. The myth that if you eat cholesterol, it raises cholesterol. The myth that if you have high cholesterol, you'll be more. One really good study was published in the Lancet, 2001. It was a study. And what they found was that for men over the age of 60 and for women at any age, the higher your cholesterol, the longer you live. And it was just a minor risk factor for men below the age of 60, probably because people, they're the population group that's most under stress. And when you're under stress, you make cholesterol because you need to use it for stress hormones. If you didn't make cholesterol, you'd, freak out. You wouldn't be able to handle the stress. So it was very fraudulent research that started all this.
Well, there was a research paper. I wish I had the exact quote or the exact site for this paper. And it essentially said that, I'm sure you've heard this one. I want to say it was either a cholesterol of 170 or 175, 178. It was 170 something. A cholesterol of, let's say, 170 or below increased the causes of mortality from all causes.
Yes. Yeah. We're more likely to die. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a minor risk factor, they say, for men under the age of 60, very minor risk factor. But there's all sorts of explanations for this. And the solution is not to lower your cholesterol. I mean,
Yeah.
these cholesterol lowering drugs are complete poisons. And if anyone's on them, I just say get off immediately. You can go off cold turkey. You can't go off your blood pressure medications cold turkey. You have to do that gradually. But you can go off statins immediately. I heard an amazing story just yesterday about a man who had terrible Parkinson's disease. Couldn't bring a spoon to his mouth, and he never thought about his diet or anything. But anyway, he found out about Weston Price Foundation. He got on our diet. He started drinking raw milk, and he got off all his meds, especially his statins. And guess what? He had no Parkinson's. Completely disappeared. Parkinson's is a side effect of these cholesterol-lowering medications. Alzheimer's, muscle wasting, back pain, erectile dysfunction. I mean, really? You want to take a cholesterol-lowering drug? I mean,
Hey there. I wanted to take a second to thank you for tuning into these episodes. And I also wanted to ask if you would take a moment and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble. Subscribe to these services. And I wanted to also show you my website. Now, granted, this website is still under construction, but you can find my link tree here on this website. And with this link tree, you can go to everything that I do. You've got YouTube, Spotify, Rumble. You've got my Substack writings if you want to read those, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Please follow me on all these different platforms and subscribe to, once again, YouTube, etc. This really helps to support the things that I do and allows me to continue doing these things. So if you feel like you're getting a lot out of these, which I hope you do, because I know I do, please take a moment to do those things. And once again, I appreciate you. I'll see you on the flip side.
be my guest.
One of my favorite.
But don't make a pass at me, please.
One of my favorite slides to show when I would do seminars on nutrition would be one of a blow up of a cell membrane.
Yes,
and because
I show a slide like that too. Yes. Yeah.
Well, because the old adage is you are what you eat, right? And so there's no better representation of that than looking at a cellular membrane, because the cell membrane is made of basically carb, protein, fat, right? And cholesterol, right? If you look in there, you've got your proteins, you've got your glycos, your glycolipids, your glycoproteins, and the glycos are your carbs, basically. And you've got your phospholipids, all fat, right?
All fat, yes.
All fat. And you've got your cholesterol molecules in there. And those cholesterol molecules are what create the stability for that cell membrane.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you have too many unsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, or too little cholesterol, your cells get floppy and leaky. That's the way Mary Enig always described it. Your cells get floppy and leaky. You can't have a different chemistry on the inside and outside of the cell, and they just don't work anymore. And that's when you become vulnerable to things like cancer, because your cells aren't working. They're not getting enough oxygen. They're not getting enough nutrients, and something breaks down.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all at the cellular level. That's always the key factor. Yeah.
Yes.
I read another study, and once again, I wish I knew the site for this one. And it was a couple of studies actually, where basically they took cadavers and took samplings of the arterial blockages within cadavers to
Yeah.
test what those blockages were made of. And it was almost entirely polyunsaturated
Yes.
fats.
Very high levels, which is
Yeah.
unusual in the body. Yeah.
And so, it wasn't saturated fat that was blocking it up. The saturated fat, I think, on there was like 10% or something. It wasn't the vast majority of it was a polyunsaturated fat, which was coming from, all your processed, all your garbage foods.
And calcium. There's calcium in those blockages. And one of the things the statins do is promote the calcification of the arteries.
Yeah.
I have a copy of that study on the wall because, yeah, statins promote calcification of the arteries. Is that what you want?
Yeah. Well,
But it's so hard for people to go against their doctors. The doctors are very persuasive because their bonus, which can be half their salary, the bonus at the end of the year depends on how many statin prescriptions they've written. And if they don't write enough statin prescriptions, not only do they forego their bonus, but their whole practice does.
right.
So
Same thing with vaccinations. They're making all their money off of what they prescribe.
Yeah, and if they don't do it, they will be kicked out of the practice because everybody else suffers. It's tremendous peer pressure. And yeah, I would just never go to a doctor who's in a practice. You only want an independent doctor. But even so, and if you say, I'm not going to take a statin, they say, well, you can't be my patient. That's what they say.
I know. I've seen that with clients. It's not just horror. You think that would be an ethical violation immediately, and there would be some kind of a call to arms against that. They do the same thing with vaccination. Either you vaccinate or you get out of my office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this happened to my son. Their baby, they didn't vaccinate, didn't give vitamin K, and but something had shown up on the ultrasound that they were a little worried about. So just not to get social services on their back, they kept all their appointments with the pediatrician, and they said, well, we're not going to vaccinate. And they said, well, you have to find another pediatrician, and which of course they did,
Oy. That stuff infuriates me. It just seems.
It does force us to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
To take charge of our health, to only do what rationally is good for our bodies and not what the doctors are telling us to do. It is, it's part of that highway to individuality and thinking critically. And that's what we're being forced to do. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. Health autonomy. Another one of the key factors in nourishing traditions, to me, some of the biggest things there was the information on saturated fats, there was information on cholesterol. The other thing was fermenting, and fermented foods. That was another huge piece of the book. And that was certainly one that I really knew. And here's the thing, I should have known this because my grandmother, like you talk about your mother, my grandmother was the prototypical idea of the grandmother in the kitchen who did everything. She canned everything. She had a huge garden in the backyard. My family hunted. So we had venison, we had squirrel, we had rabbit, we had dove, we had all sorts of stuff in our refrigerator. We went fishing. My dad even made a trawling net, even though it was a bass boat, and we trawled for shrimp and crabs. Mm-hmm. So we had fresh food up the wazoo. We had huge gardens. So we had all that. So I got to grow up with that as well. And my grandmother was a big on canning and putting things away for the winter. So, tell me a little more about fermenting. And here's something that you could address too. And that is that, some people don't handle fermented foods very well.
Yeah. If they have a histamine intolerance. Yeah. Well, all traditional culture. Now, Dr. Price did not talk about this. But all traditional cultures fermented food. There's absolutely no exceptions to. They made beverages, they fermented vegetables. We think the most popular one, of course, is sauerkraut. They fermented meat, they fermented fish, they fermented everything. Even in Italy, they fermented lard. So,
Fermented lard.
yeah, they had this lard they mixed with herbs. It was the herbs that fermented, of course, but
Interesting.
and you can ferment butter. I mean, you can ferment cream and make cultured butter.
Sure. Okay.
And of
Yeah.
course, dairy food, you only need a very small amount of carbohydrate in the food, whatever it is, to ferment it. Anyway, I didn't know anything about fermentation, and as I was writing the book, I had a telephone interview with Jacques de Langres, who had the Celtic Sea Salt Company, and I was
Yeah.
going to recommend unrefined salt, which I did, of course. And he said, "Well, you know, Sally, you need to talk about if you really are going to make this book how traditional people ate, then you need to talk about fermented foods and you need to talk about grains and sourdough bread and soaking your oatmeal." And he there were no books in English on this at the time, but he pointed me to a couple of books in French, which my education did teach me French. So I wish I'd taken statistics, but at least I got French. And and there are some translations from these books in Nourishing Traditions. So I got to work on this, and my kids tell all these funny stories about these weird things on the counter that I was experimenting with. But I worked on sauerkraut and a lot of different condiments that were fermented, and then I started soaking the oats and making sourdough bread. And one of the most popular recipes in the book is the pancakes, the soaked pancakes. So, and I'll tell you a story about oatmeal. Uh, I thought I was allergic to oatmeal. My mother made oatmeal when we were growing up, and we'd have oatmeal a couple times a week. And I stopped eating it because if I ate oatmeal, I would have something like a toxic shock about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
And I would be ravenously hungry and break out in a sweat. And so it was that I said, this is not good for me. So I stopped eating oatmeal. And then, of course, I learned about soaking, and which my mother wasn't doing. And so I said, well, I'll try this oatmeal if I soak it overnight, and which I did, and no toxic shock.
Interesting.
And I always ask this question at my talks about, does anyone else had this experience with oatmeal? And always there's 3 or 4 hands that go up.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things in oats that are anti-nutrients, not
Yes.
just the phytic acid, but the enzyme inhibitors, the oxalates, and I don't know about oxalates, but lectins and things like that. And they are all neutralized by the soaking process. And then oats become a wonderful food. And of course, you eat the oats with about a half a stick of butter or more if you want to, but that's where you get your butter in the morning.
Are you familiar with Dr. Pompa?
No.
Dr. Pompa, he's big in the Maha movement. He's a chiropractor. He does the Pompa program, which is a detoxing program. Big. He often talks about the anti-nutrients in foods
Yeah.
as essentially being nature's way of presenting hormetic stress. That, it's because if you went around trying to avoid every single food that supposedly has something in there that's really bad for you, okay, there'd be so many foods you wouldn't be able to eat. And so some of these things like lectins, like phytic acid, they're there to create a hormetic stress for your body. So it's not, because there's a lot of good things about it too. If you took the phytic acid out, you've got tons of great things that are really good about that food. So there's one thing that's bad and there's a whole bunch of things that are good. So is that one thing bad enough to avoid the whole food as a whole?
It's bad enough to prepare the food properly so it's not
Yes.
there. And all cultures did this. A really good example is the Australian Aborigines. All the grains were put in these leaching baskets and put in the streams for 2 weeks before they did anything. We look at Africa. Africans were the best fermenters of all. They made various beers, which are an acquired taste. They sort of smell like barf because they're so fermented. but they'll drink this by the gallon when they're working in the hot sun.
And they did fermented milks too, right?
And they do fermented milks. I have hanging on my kitchen wall. I have a gourd from the Maasai, which my son brought to me. He'd been in Africa, and he said he had to put brandy in there for weeks to get the smell out.
Well, the beet kvass,
Yes.
one of my favorites. I'd be curious if you have a recipe for that yourself that you would share, because I have one that I do, and I want to make sure that I'm doing it properly enough to get the right type of bacteria fermentation out of it.
Well, it's in the book. It's in Nourishing Tradition.
I can't find my book, so.
Okay, well, Nourishing Traditions. See, back then, so that's 90, about 1990, 96, I could actually buy that in the stores. It came
Yeah.
from Germany, and it was fermented, and somebody told me about it. That was the first fermented food I was exposed to.
Really?
But then but then they stopped. The FDA wouldn't let it in, and nobody was making it here. So, I actually just kind of figured this recipe out. You chop a couple of beets, peel them, and chop them coarsely. If you chop them too fine, it's not going to be good.
The fermentation goes up, right?
Yeah, and it gets alcoholic, actually.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
beets are very sweet. So you chop them coarsely, you put them in a mason jar, quart-sized mason jar, and I add 1 tablespoon of homemade whey. And that's your inoculant, and that keeps it from going alcoholic. And then you fill it with water, and you add a tablespoon of salt, tablespoon of whey and tablespoon of salt. And leave that on the counter for about 3 or 4 days, and then put it in the refrigerator.
Now, there's a company here in Cincinnati called Fab Ferments. They make some fabulous products. They make a beet kvass. And I remember asking one of them once, I said, I've read some recipes and they always talk about a starter. You need some kind of starter in there. And they were like, yes, but you don't have to use a starter. One of their suggestions was, don't peel the beets, wash the mud off, wash all the dirt off really well, but keep the skin on because there is bacteria within the skin.
Could be, yeah.
And they said to use some purple cabbage and do the same thing with that and just shred it up a little bit. And then put the salt, make sure it's really good salt. And then do the same thing and do it without a starter. So I've done it that way. I can't say for sure that I'm getting
it would be good to do a study on this to see what the different, if you use whey, you're definitely going to get lactobacillus.
Right.
Which is, the important one. So, but it'd be fun to try these different methods. The Weston A Price Foundation should do this. And then,
do a little study. Yeah.
Yes. But beet kvass, from Nourishing Traditions, I think the most popular thing is the pancakes. But beet kvass is number 2. And I've drunk beet kvass every morning of my life since I figured out the recipe.
We forced our kids to drink a shot of it. All you gotta do is do a shot. Just do a shot.
Yeah.
And they would like, because it's got out that vinegary taste to it, But the recipe that I used started from yours, and then because I couldn't find a starter to purchase, and because I really didn't want to go to the trouble of making it, because I didn't want to go to the trouble of making it. That's why when I started feeling out to see if there was another way to do it, but that's where my first time doing it came from, was with that recipe within the book there. So, so much great stuff.
But we're crazy, of course. People think we're crazy. They come in your kitchen. What is that? And I have a area where I make kombucha.
Yes.
I do a 30-day ferment on kombucha, and what's that?
Well, I love Whole Foods used to sell Fab Ferments kombucha in there, and we would go in there with our kids, and there were a couple of times we purchased it and we went and we sat down and we let our kids drink the kombucha. And we did that for a long time. And then one time one of the employees saw and was like, they can't do that. And we're like, what are you talking about? Your kids can't drink that. I'm like, what are you talking? The kombucha, because it's got like 1% alcohol in it, right?
Well, it has to be under 0.5.
Yeah. So it was like some really small amount of alcohol. So they can't drink that. And I'm like, whatever, it's good for them.
Well, so fruit juice, if you buy a bottle of pineapple juice, it'll have alcohol in it.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So everything's like that. And they just make kombucha adhere to the standards they have for fruit juice.
Interesting. I guess because the fruit juice.
Amos Miller, the farmer in Pennsylvania who does all the raw milk and everything, he had a big a big truck going down to Florida, was full of all his products. And they stopped him at the border and they made him pull over, and they opened up the truck and there's all this raw milk and raw butter and raw cheese. And they only wanted the kombucha to test it for alcohol.
Oh my gosh.
So they took all his kombucha, of course, never reimbursed him for it. And he never heard from them again. So he assumed that it passed the test.
Interesting. Well, you brought up something that would be worth you mentioning too, and that is raw milk. I know that you also sell it at your farm, right?
Yes, we sell. Well, we sell it for dogs and cats.
Dogs and cats. Yes. Is it for dogs and cats? We'll just.
In the label, it says for dogs and cats.
There you go. I know that here, people can do like a cow share.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that was our first case. So we started in 1999, and I was working with Pete Kennedy, wonderful man. And I said, we're just going to slowly go after each one of these states. And Ohio was the first state. There was a court case, which we went to, and we won that you could do the cow shares. And they just proliferated. Same with Michigan. You can do cow shares in Michigan. You go look at the map of Michigan, and there might be 200 cow shares in the whole state, just evenly dispersed. Raw milk is available for everybody.
Yeah. Well, in Cincinnati, which is where I am, there are cow share programs, and you can do whatever you want with the milk because it's your cow, right?
Yeah, right. So, by the way, I think our conference is going to be in Cincinnati next year.
Oh, really?
I mean, don't hold me to it, but we're looking at Cincinnati.
I am writing that down right now.
You can have a booth for your.
Absolutely. That two things. I still want to talk more about raw milk.
Okay.
Because that is a big topic right now. Maha's talking about it. There's a big conversation, so that's on people's minds. But also, I would like you to talk about the local chapters of the Western Price.
Okay. Well, we actually started a campaign for real milk before we set up the Weston A. Price Foundation. We started that in early 1999. We set up a website. At that time, there were about 30 sources of raw milk in the whole country that we had on the website. The idea was just tell people where the raw milk is and make this free. Nobody has to pay to be registered. And now we have about 4,000 sources listed and many that are unlisted, plus all of the articles we've written on the safety and health benefits of raw milk. This is a movement whose time has come. We sometimes get up to 100,000 new visits per month.
Wow.
On this website. It's a really big website. And it's really kind of changed the conversation about farming in America because of this, the number of small farms is actually increasing. And I think the day will come when there's more people drinking raw milk than pasteurized. We don't know how many people drink pasteurized milk because so many people can't drink pasteurized milk.
And that's realmilk.com, right?
Realmilk.com.
Yeah.
So real milk means it's unprocessed, so it's raw. Cows are on grass, and it's full fat. That's real milk. That's the kind of milk our ancestors drank. That's the kind of milk that has so many wonderful health benefits. So and I for parents, there's so many temptations out there. You're never going to do 100% perfect diet for your kids, but raw milk is the great insurance policy. Even if a child is otherwise not eating that well, if he's getting raw milk, he has a chance to grow up healthy.
What to people who have the fear in their minds from, people going, oh, well, bacteria and, you can't drink raw milk. And the reason we pasteurized was saved so many people. What is the statistical percentages of safety when it comes to drinking raw milk? What's the reality of it?
There's more deaths from pasteurized milk and milk products, more illnesses. There's no guarantee. And I always like to point out the largest foodborne illness outbreak in history was with pasteurized milk in 1984 and 1985 in the Midwest. And there were about 200,000 people who were sickened by raw milk. And what did
by pasteurized milk?
By, excuse me, I'm sorry, by pasteurized milk.
Yeah.
And this was when they were consolidating the industry. This was a very large dairy, a confinement dairy, and things are much dirtier in the confinement dairies. And I always say, instead of cleaning things up, making things cleaner, they went for hotter. And they went for the ultra high temperature pasteurization, which totally destroys the milk. Most milk today is ultra high temperature pasteurized. All the milk we're giving to children in school is ultra high temperature pasteurized, and skim milk, which is an abomination.
Absolutely.
And what people don't understand is the dairy industry is run by accountants. They don't care about your health or your children's health. And they don't get very much money for the fat if they leave it in the milk. There's very little money to be made by giving children whole milk and making them healthy. The way they make their money is on ice cream. And they get at least 5 times more for the fat in the ice cream than they do if they leave it in the milk. So what do they want you to do? They want you to starve for fats during the day, low-fat milk, low-fat food. And then by 8 o'clock at night, you're so starved for fat. Your body just has to have this fat. But you go to the freezer and pull out a half gallon of ice cream and eat the whole thing standing up right in front of the freezer. Your body just needs that fat so badly. And they make out because they're getting a lot more for that fat if they put it in ice cream. The other thing that they make money on, and I just learned this. My daughter did an interview with a cheese producer. He said, and of course, when you make cheese, you have a lot of whey left over. Now, on our farm, we give that whey to the pigs. It's a wonderful food for pigs. But he said, I never started to make money until I bought a machine for making whey powder. And that was the real money maker for him. And the whey powder is truly toxic because it takes these very delicate whey proteins, the most delicate proteins in nature, and treats them to very high temperatures in the presence of oxygen. And these proteins are transformed into toxic proteins in your body. So this is a foreign protein. I don't know what this is. It has to mount an immune response. And these proteins are also very concentrated. They're very hard on the kidneys. So we're doing all the wrong things with our milk. Instead of honoring real milk as nature's most perfect, most sacred, most mysterious food with special fats in it that we find nowhere else in nature or very few other places in nature. And we just make it toxic and take it apart and, sell the components that make the most money with advertising. We've lost our way, Michael, with food. And I can tell you, nobody in that industry cares about you.
Oh.
Or about your children.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're the devil incarnate. And the people in that industry are trapped in the industry. They're trapped in the whole system. And the only thing we can do is just say, no, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to buy these products. I'm not going to drink them. Certainly not going to give them to my kids.
The words you're saying there, I've on this podcast have been repeated a million times. And that is, this goes for the vaccine industry. This goes for all the pharmaceutical industry. This goes for the food industry. And it goes, and I'm being general here, so pardon me to those corporations who do not meet this description, but it's going to be few of you. And that is that for the most part, the corporation is about money. It's about the bottom line. The bottom line is making a dollar bill. It's not about saving lives. It's not about the good health of the citizen. It's about making money. That doesn't mean that there's individuals in that company that might not be their goal. There may be scientists there that think this is best and this is best, and we do want this to save this. But the corporation's goal is to make money. Otherwise,
and they have to make money. And my father was an industrialist, and he always said the the moral thing I have to do is make money so I can pay my people. Now, this wasn't a industry that hurt, but um, it's a dilemma. But I'm kind of a fan of Rudolf Steiner, and he said,
Yeah.
this idea that you have capitalism here and communism here, and those are the only two choices. This is wrong. You have different types of industry for different sectors of the economy. So for utilities, okay, that's more like a communist system. And the local government supports them. You want to keep those costs down for the people, and kind of like a bureaucracy, right? And then for heavy industry, you do need capital for these industries, and that's capitalism. Wouldn't work without capitalism. But there's something in the middle, and I call it free enterprise. And food, so many things can be made small with small farms or small companies, and food is number one. Tom Cowan and I always said the clothes and shoes should be part of that too. So it just depends on where you want to spend your, especially when it comes to food. You have plenty of choices now. We urge people to join our 50% pledge, that they spend 50% of their food dollar directly purchasing foods directly from farmers or artisans.
Local is best always.
Yeah, and then they can spend the other 50% on pineapple and rice and things from celebrate how small the world has become. I mean, that's also kind of a miracle, but we really want to spend 50% of our food budget supporting these small farms.
I firmly agree. I firmly agree.
And that's what our local chapters do.
Yes, good segue. Thank you. Yes, perfect.
So yes, we have over 400 local chapters worldwide. We're doing a big push to increase that number. And every local chapter, and I'm sure there's one in Cincinnati, keeps a local food list. So just say you just moved to Cincinnati and you want to find raw milk and good eggs and sourdough bread, you call your local chapter and they will have the food list for you. Totally free to the artisan and the farmer.
Yeah, there is. So for those who are watching and they're in the Cincinnati area, there is eatlocalcorv.org. Eatlocalcorv.org. The CORV is the Central Ohio River Valley.
Oh, okay.
And that website is spectacular, and it has all the different local farms where you can get eggs and you can get a cow share and you can get meats and you can get all these different things. And we have so many resources in Cincinnati for that. We have an excellent farmers market called Findlay Market in the middle of downtown, which has been there for, I don't know how many, over 100 years for sure. And every Saturday and Sunday, they have local farmers piled up there. You can get local produce. They've got farmers markets in at least another dozen other outlying areas around downtown Cincinnati where you can do the same thing. So Cincinnati's got a great, it's a great area for that. There, if you want it, it's there for you. We have a lot of local butchers who do things too. So there's a lot of resources.
Good. Another issue for farmers is the policy of USDA to close down small abattoirs.
Yes.
It's so hard to be open, and we don't produce beef. We have someone who does it for our store, but we always have cull cows. Right now we have 5 cows that are past their prime, and they should be ground beef, a little bit of extra income for the farmer. We can't get them butchered, at least not legally. We're very supportive of Thomas Massey, who lives very near Cincinnati, and his Prime Act, which would allow custom butchers, with lots of custom butchers in all the states because they do people's deer and whole cows and things, but allow custom butchers to cut and package to sell in the state. That would be a huge help to us. I mean, I have 3 custom butchers within 10 minutes of where I live, but I cannot take my animals there and have them cut and packaged for us to sell.
Interesting.
Something wrong with that. Yeah.
I think a lot of those regulations just come from the higher ups that don't want the smaller to make income off of that or make money off of it.
Absolutely. That is the purpose of this kind of law. What people don't realize is that the model that's promoted by USDA is the Marxist model. The man who promoted industrialization of agriculture was Karl Marx. He hated small farmers. He hated the peasant farmer and wanted to get rid of them. And there's different ways of getting rid of farmers. You can shoot them, you can starve them, but these are not very becoming, kind of messy. Or you can get rid of them with legislation. And that's what we've done in this country. And if you spoke to somebody at USDA and told them that this was a communist organization, they'd think you were crazy. But it is. This is what they're promoting.
And that's subsidies are the same type of thing. You start giving subsidies, it's like giving a person heroin and making them addicted to something to where they can't get off, right?
Yeah. Well, call that farming the mailbox.
Farming the mailbox.
Waiting for the check.
Waiting for the check to come.
There's no checks for small farmers, and we wouldn't want them anyway.
Well, the whole, one of the other MAHA objectives is to promote regenerative farming.
Yes.
And Secretary Kennedy put out a post yesterday, I guess. It was very recent, which he needed to do because it was in response to Trump and his recent supporting of Bayer and the whole glyphosate thing. And so
a German company, okay, to make it clear, we're giving this special favor to a German company. Yeah.
Well, and Secretary Kennedy has, like you said a minute, I don't envy his position. He's got the hardest job there is right now, and he's under attack every second of every day. And the only one that's helping support what he needs to do is Trump. And Trump made this decision, and I don't know how much Kennedy knew about it in advance. Knowing Trump, he probably didn't know about it in advance. He probably just did it. Damn the consequences. But his response was essentially saying, I get the reason why Trump did it. He doesn't want the system to collapse, because if we just took the rug out from under it, everything would collapse, because they're dependent upon these chemicals across the board to support everything. And if we took it away, things would collapse, and it has to be done the right way. I don't know how much I get that or buy that, but.
Well, I'll tell you a little story. There were some farmers who went and testified for Congress, and one of them was my friend Bob Quinn, who farms 3,000 acres without a single chemical. He started to make money until he stopped using the chemicals. And he got up before the Congress and said, I farmed 3,000 acres. They left until last. He only had 2 minutes, And he said, I have very few crop losses and I make money. Now, if I were USDA, I would want to talk to this man. And how can we help farmers do this? Nobody was interested.
Yeah.
Their mandate is to sell grains. They're entirely in the hands of the pesticide manufacturers.
And they overproduce particular grains because they're also using them to create chemicals.
Well, and ethanol, and
yeah, right.
We export half of our soybeans. So this idea that we wouldn't have enough food is ludicrous.
Well, it's 100% true. And I get the idea that if you're going to change to regenerative farming, there are a whole lot of farmers out there that have no clue as to how to do that, because they've been adulterated for so long.
And they don't want to, and they're not smart enough to.
Right.
Because Bob Quinn is a very smart man, and he's figured out how to rotate and which part of his farm is the best one for the sorghum and which is best for the sunflower seeds.
Yeah. It takes more effort. It takes more effort, but the bottom line is the end product is what you want, And
it'll only come with increase in demand. I mean, there's a big increase in demand for wheat. And, certain farmers are stepping up to it. They can get more for it. They usually sell direct to the baker. So it's increasing. One of the things they could do, I'm sure they will. In 2005, I don't know if the USDA or FDA decreed that it's okay to spray glyphosate on wheat just before harvest, on any grain, so wheat, oats, lentils. And so they spray the glyphosate 2 days before harvest, and it's all there when they harvest. It hasn't had time to break down, and it does break down over time. But this is why we've seen such a huge increase in what people think is gluten intolerance.
Right.
But it's really glyphosate intolerance. So when people learn this, and nobody wants to go without bread, they buy sourdough organic bread. And so there is an increase in demand for organic wheat.
And people are buying the 00, or is it double zero Italian organic flour, to try and get away from that. And
einkorn.
Einkorn, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The Jovial brand is good. I like the Jovial brand.
Our philosophy is we don't promote any extreme diet. And we're just publishing an article in the journal on a need for carbs in a diet. You do need some carbs. Not a lot, but you need carbs for thyroid. And so, and all these, except for the Eskimo diets, they all had carbs.
Yeah, the need, one of the ideas that doesn't get promoted as often, I think, is diet variation, is not getting stuck into a diet that is exactly the same all the time.
Yeah. And I always say the purpose of vegetables, and that gives you some carbs, of course. Purpose of vegetables is to be a vehicle for butter. So
Julia Child would love you, Sally. She would love you.
Who's this?
Julia Child.
Oh, yeah. And she says, if you don't like butter, use cream.
There you go. Well, what was the that great scene in Julia and Julia? I'm sure you saw the movie.
I didn't see the movie.
You never saw the movie? Oh my gosh. There's a great scene at the very end where not Julia Child, but the other one, she takes a package of, sticks of butter and leaves it sitting in the Smithsonian Museum where the Julia Child exhibit is as a tribute to her, and just leaves it there and walks off. So
as I say, I mean, we used the Joy of Cooking, and then my father got the Gourmet magazine. It was a 2-volume set, leather set, and we had to cook some things out of that. But it was the Julia Child book that really, it was kind of liberating.
It was really a game changer in the world of nutritional cookbooks.
Well, it wasn't a nutritional cookbook.
I misusing the word, but yes. Yeah.
But it was a nutritional, yes. Right.
Yeah. But it was a game changer in the world of cookbooks, in the world of cooking, in a sense, because those were recipes that no one else had the access to and knew how to do. It was a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the same vein, I think Nourishing Traditions was a game changer.
Well, I like to think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and I didn't know what I was doing. I self-published advanced. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't do any marketing. And the first month I sold maybe, 100 copies. And then next month, 200 copies. So I was selling 6,000 copies a month, which is amazing.
And that was all self-published?
I finally formed a company to.
Okay. Yeah. I honestly, I cannot recall how I found your book. I don't recall. I mean, because you published it in what, 92, 94?
Well, it came out in 96, and
96.
Then I immediately started revising. And so the version that people have now is 1999.
Okay. So I must have gotten that in 99 or 2000, because it was, I mean, I had the copy that I had for, I'm telling you, it was abused, in a loving way, in a very loving way, but it was abused. And so I'm gonna have to get another copy to put on my shelves now, just to have it, because just, I want to make sure it's in my library. But it was a very influential book, because it was, my bachelor's degree was in kinesiology with a minor in nutrition. And then I went to chiropractic college and got my doctorate in chiropractic. And all the nutrition there was pretty standard, although with chiropractic, of course, I got some, variation.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until reading, your book and a few other ones like that, that it was really, saying, there's a whole nother world out there.
There is, yes, yes. Um, the naturopaths, unfortunately, I think there's one naturopathic college that teaches nourishing traditions, but those colleges are basically plant-based. So,
Plant-based. Interesting.
yeah, yeah, most of
Interesting.
them. I forget which one it is that isn't.
The biggest one is, I think, is Bastyr, correct, on the
Yeah, yeah.
West Coast. I don't know what they do. So yeah, it's really curious to me that they teach a plant-based diet as the diet of choice.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Interesting.
still all this goes back to Harvey Kellogg, who had the sanatorium and people flocked to it. And he was a crackpot. He was a really weird man. And his was that's why he developed these cereals because he wanted people eating grains and not meat. He said that meat would um, cause you to have unpleasant desires and yeah, and yeah.
Uh, okay. The ideas that people come up with. So, well, Sally, I know that you have limited time. I don't want
Yeah,
to.
well, I appreciate you having me, and
Yeah.
yeah, we'll publicize this if you want to send me a link.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I am going to say it again. I'm going to thank you once again from the bottom of my heart for doing everything that you've done in this industry. You have made a difference.
Well, let's just give a couple websites. The Weston A. Price Foundation, westonaprice.org, and I encourage people to become members. It's only $40. We've never raised our price in 25 years, and we publish a journal. That's what I'm working on right now, a quarterly journal that people just love. And you become part of our family. And I certainly urge you to attend our conference coming up in October.
Hopefully in Cincinnati
Yeah, no, that's next year.
next year.
Uh,
Okay.
2026 is going to be in Washington, D.C.
Gotcha. Okay. Good place for it this year.
Yeah, yes, yes. And Thomas Massey is going to be a speaker.
Oh, nice.
I have to tell you that had a layover in the Cincinnati airport, and I hear this voice, Sally, and it's Thomas, and
No
that's the
way.
airport he uses. So yeah, we're friends.
Well, and
Any,
for those who don't know, the Cincinnati airport is actually in Kentucky.
oh, is it really? Well, he said
Yes.
this is my airport. So,
Yeah.
and our keynote address is going to be given by Aaron Seary,
Oh,
the
nice.
wonderful lawyer.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be a great conference. And then we have a website, realmilk.com, where you can find raw milk. My own website is nourishingtraditions.com. And then there's a website for my books, newtrendspublishing.com. And I just want to mention that in addition to Nourishing Traditions, I have a cookbook for children and a Nourishing Traditions book on baby and child care.
Now, just to be sure, that newtrendspublishing.com, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm writing that down. That wasn't on the information that you sent me, so I want to make sure that's on there. All of this I'm
Well,
going to put into the description underneath for both for Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble, which is going to be on all three
if you want to
formats.
order the books by the case, I give a 50% discount. You have to do that through New Trends Publishing. You can't do that on Amazon.
Well, the local chapters is that also on one of these sites?
Yes, at westonaprice.org, there's
Okay.
a place where you can look up local chapters. And yeah, and then you can just contact them. Most of them have emails.
Yeah, I know we have one here in Cincinnati. I've had a lot of connection with them over the years. I haven't in recent years, but
And a lot of chapters, it's not required, but a lot of chapters have meetings, monthly or quarterly meetings with potlucks. And, it's sometimes it's kind of lonely path, especially if you're a mom and you're feeding your kid right, you're doing raw milk and not vaccinating. You may not be welcomed in the play groups.
yep,
And
absolutely.
and this is a way to meet like-minded people.
A lot of the local homeschoolers are very involved in things like this because that's kind of their mindset, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my book, which is Vaccines Point by Point,
Oh, yes. Oh, send us a review copy, please.
I am
Yeah.
going to send you a review copy. I'm hoping that it's going to be done within this month. Brian Hooker wrote the foreword for it.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
James Lyons Weilers wrote a quote for the back of it. So,
And who's publishing it?
I'm doing it through Book Vault. I'm publishing it myself.
Okay.
So I went around to a bunch of publishers, and either they weren't interested at all in that topic, or they kept telling me, yes, we're interested. And 6 months would go by. Yes, we're still interested. 6 months would go by. Yes, we're still, and then just nothing was happening. So finally I just said, forget it. I'm going to do it myself.
Is Skyhorse Publishing. Did you go to them?
Skyhorse. I went to Skyhorse, and I just.
The same thing, run around. Well,
Yep.
They published The Contagion Myth that Tom Cowan and I wrote.
I have not read that yet. That is high on my list. Yes.
Well,
Yes. And I need to get
subject. Yeah.
I need to get Dr. Cowan on here as well. So
Yes.
I'm gonna
Yes.
put his name down here to remind myself to get in contact with him. If you have a preferred way of contacting him that he wouldn't mind you giving me,
Yeah. Just email me. Email me. I'll get it for you.
I will do that. Well, we're wrapping up here. I was about to call you doctor. You feel like a doctor to me, but not that a good in a good sense. Sally, thank you so much for.
Thanks for having me, and maybe we'll meet in 2027.
I'm gonna make it a plan to do so. Maybe I'll get a booth and do my book there too.
Yeah, absolutely. You should. Yes, very good.
For everybody else watching, as always, we'll see you on the flip side. Bye-bye.